The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading article and features from USA Today for the 3rd of March. Today your readers are Tom Travers and
Tom Scanlon.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or other print disabilities that make reading, printing a book, or turning the page difficult, if not impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us at the website at rfrreading.org. This first article is titled, NOEM is Out. DHS, the Department of Homeland Security veterans, still worry. They say, the veterans that is, the agency veers from its original mission. And this is an article written by Lauren Villagran. Javad Kaczynski recalls the day workers came to his federal building in 2003 and switched all the signs to the new U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. He was a young intelligence analyst, excited to be embedded with the special agents who did additional security investigations under the newly minted Department of Homeland Security, ICE. It was a smaller agency then, mostly doing a terrorism investigation and arresting 3 or 4 people per week, he said. Today, the agency he knew is hardly recognizable. That is, before President Donald Trump removed Homeland Security Kristi Noem on March 5th, just a few days ago. She led a 13-month transformation of the department with White House backing. That's dented public support for the agency. Quote, it went from a national security agency to the president's personal Gestapo, said Gazelski, who now practices immigration and civil rights law. Even with Noel out, he said, I don't understand how this agency survives without a gutting of everyone who was hired and anyone who has been in a leadership position. Calls for the Department of Homeland Security to be overhauled or dismissed have been around almost as long as the department itself. Created in the wake of the 9/11 terror attacks, the consolidation of customs, immigration, airport security, and emergency management functions under a single banner was seen as necessary to vet foreigners and protect the country from another deadly attack. Skeptics question whether the department's vast view powers could someday be turned inward against the American people. Kazali and other DHS veterans who helped coalesce the department in the wake of 9/11 say they are watching the department's shift to aggressive immigration enforcement with alarm for the public trust, public safety, and the future of the agency they developed and helped build. They have really converted the Department of Homeland Security to the Department of Immigration, which is not what it was set up to be. So said former Homeland Security Janet Napolito, who led the department between 2009 and 2013 under the Obama registration. USA Today spoke with half a dozen Homeland Security veterans who worked for or had a hand in building the department. They applauded the administration's achievements on border security, which include reducing illegal crossings to fewer than 9,000 per month from tens of thousands in the last year of the Biden administration, None are advocating for ICE to be abolished or DHS dismantled. But they do worry that the administration's singular focus on deporting millions of people could lead to the agency's downfall. They cite fundamental shifts in the mission, policies, and culture over the past year, fully endorsed and often led by the White House, that are unlikely to change under Trump's new pick for DHS security. U.S. Senator Markwayne Mullin, a Republican from Oklahoma. DHS didn't immediately respond to a request for a comment. In announcing Nguyen's removal, Trump said on social media that Mulligan would work tirelessly to keep our border secure, stop migrant crime, murderers, and other criminals from illegally entering our country's end of the scourge of illegal drugs, and make America safe again. Among the changes that concern the DHS veterans are officers masking in public, thousands of federal agents redirected to immigration enforcement, the rapid hiring of roughly 10,000 new ICE officials and officers in the condensed ICE training academy, the use of administrative rather than judicial warrants to enter homes, risking Fourth Amendment violations and mandatory detention for tens of thousands of immigrants. The question is, what are the American people getting out of this? Napolitano asked, are we safer and more secure? I would suggest that not only do we not feel safer or more secure, she said, we feel less safe and less secure. Noem and high-profile visibility as Homeland Security Secretary, a former South Dakota governor, had a high-profile presence at the top of the Department of Homeland Security. She made regular appearances on Fox News and other television networks, appearing in elaborate social media videos publicizing enforcement, and took a combative approach during congressional hearings. In her media appearance, she wore a bulletproof vest before a pre-dawn ICE raid, donned a Border Patrol cap as she painted the border wall black, and rode on horseback, Mount Rushmore in the background, telling immigrants to self-deport. In hearings before the Senate and House Judiciary Committees on March 3 and 4, Noem said the publicity helped drive more than 2 million immigrants to self-deport in the past year. But the mass deportation promise that energized voters during Trump's campaign has undernerved a growing number of Americans, this according to multiple recent polls. The tactics immigration officers have used across the United States, namely chasing farm workers through fields, tackling a business owner in his own parking lot, detaining citizens, all these things have contributed to the loss of support. So has the GARB, federal law enforcement officers conducting immigration enforcements have been heavily armed, decked in camouflage, and wearing masks to cover their faces. Tensions boiled over in Minneapolis, where federal agents killed 2 U.S. citizens, Renee Good and Alex Pretty. Noem described their protest actions as domestic terrorism when they were fatally shot. In the aftermath of both shootings, videos emerged contradicting Noem's early declarations about the cases. Pressed during the oversight hearings to apologize, she refused. Polls in the wake of the shootings showed more than 6 in 10 Americans do believe the administration has gone too far in immigration enforcement, a reversal of election year surveys that showed strong support for Trump's mass deportation agenda. Quote, "I don't think they anticipated pushback from the American public," said Michael DeBrule, who served in the U.S. Border Patrol for nearly 3 decades, including the agency's highly selective Border Patrol Tactical Unit and in agency leadership, Washington, D.C. The majority wanted increased enforcement in the immigration realm. But it matters how you do that, he said. Successful policing requires a degree of trust. Even in the days leading up to her ouster by the president, Noem had supporters among key Republican lawmakers, U.S. Republican Jim Jordan from Ohio, chair of the House Judiciary Committee, celebrated the increased border security under the Trump administration. Republican members of the House and Senate Judiciary Committees lauded Noem's performance. Bold print. Homeland Security is a sprawling federal department. There are 16 separate departments and agencies under the Department of Homeland Security, including the Secret Service, the Coast Guard, the Customs and Border Protection, along with TSA, Airport Security, and Disaster Relief. By last September, the Trump administration had reassigned roughly 15,000 federal officers to immigration enforcement, according to the data obtained by the Cato Institute, which is a libertarian-leaning think tank. Among them were 6,800 Homeland Security investigators, 2,800 FBI agents, more than 2,100 Drug Enforcement Administration agents, according to Cato. These people were redirected from their duties to investigate serious criminal activities. The new DHS has, quote, turned the focus from the external threats to seeing foreigners as threats and invaders, said Patrick Comey, who served ICE and its predecessor, the Immigration and Naturalization Service, for more than 3 decades. Quote, calling everybody who crossed the border illegally a criminal alien isn't how we used to define it, Comey said. That label required someone being convicted of a crime of moral turpitude, something serious, or a drug violation. Instead of the worst of the worst, he said, what the hell does that mean? Most of the people getting arrested aren't drug traffickers or convicted of violent felonies. Trump dedicated a part of his February State of the Union address to description of fraud, violence, and killings committed by people in the country illegally, language Noem repeatedly used to justify surge operations in American cities. Now, deploying 3,000 federal agents to Minneapolis, which is a city with a police force of 600 officers, without warning or local collaboration was, from a law enforcement operations perspective, terribly planned, Napolitano said. Interior enforcement is an important part of the immigration mission. But where I think the administration has gone off the rails is by not distinguishing amongst the immigrant populations, Napolitano said. Quote, a large percentage of the people being thrown in detention have not committed any other crime, she added. They have applications pending, arguments for legal status. In a bold print, stricter enforcement of immigration nation's law. Behind the scenes, the Trump administration has also fortified DHS with muscular powers to enforce existing immigration laws. The immigration has revoked legal status from millions of immigrants and redefined who is considered, quote, criminal illegal alien, to include people who have crossed the border without permission and who have no criminal record. And this is a reinterpretation of legal doctrine, and it encourages U.S. prosecutors to charge undocumented immigrants with illegal entry charges, even in states far from the border. Even the agency that grants immigration benefits like green cards, it's now also conducting enforcement, hiring agents with guns and badges, and departments announced last year. Auditions for the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services were rebranded. They were rebranded Homeland Defenders. This was done in online recruitment and information advertising. No degree, said the advertising. The agency's hotline now encourages people who may have a pending immigration case to self-support. Homeland Security is dramatically expanding its physical footprint, from new funding from Congress, buying several deportation jets, and purchasing 10 warehouses. It plans to convert to immigration detention centers. 3 warehouses in Socorro, Texas, bought by DHS, are slated to hold 8,500 people, more than the federal prison. And it goes on and talks of other apparent irregularities. The thing that bothers me, says the author of the article, the most, is the abandonment of the national security mission, namely the reallocation of assets away from national security to the persecution of immigrants of all faiths and colors, regardless of their threat. Quote, we should get rid of violent criminals. Yes, he said. The average American isn't who a white supremacist would say, we want the good people to stay. We want the bad people to go. Comey said, Noem's ouster isn't sufficient to turn DHS around. And final quote, to end the article, she was clearly following the mandate of the administration, he said.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 17 minutes after the hour. Our next article is titled, Why Experts Feel for Rule of Law in How U.S. Has Attacked Iran. The United States bombing campaign in Iran amounts to a war launched without congressional authorization, according to many legal and defense experts. But they also say courts aren't likely to step in to do anything about it, leaving Congress as the only potential check on the president, one that the Senate's March 4th vote against a resolution to rein in the assault suggests is unlikely to occur. Some in the administration have also appeared dismissive of international law, raising fears that other countries will feel more licensed to ignore those restrictions. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, formerly the Secretary of Defense, said March 2nd that the United States was unleashing its campaign regardless of so-called international institutions say. We're moving quickly toward a might makes right vision of war powers, former White House ethics lawyer Richard Painter, who served under President George W. Bush, told USA Today. Many Trump administration officials, including the president himself, have referred to the military action as a war. The president never went to Congress for approval to strike the Iranian government. The Constitution gives Congress the power to declare war. The Justice Department referred USA Today to the White House on legal questions about U.S. military actions in Iran. A White House official told USA Today that the president has a constitutional authority as commander-in-chief to defend U.S. interests at home, and the administration believes that Iran's ballistic missile capability posed a direct threat to the United States and its allies because it shielded Iran's nuclear program. Here are the legal restrictions on presidential military actions, what Trump officials have said about them, and whether any actual limits will be opposed. The U.S. Constitution clearly states that Congress, not the President, has the power to declare war. Most legal scholars interpret that provision to mean presidents can't initiate wars on their own. According to University of San Diego law professor Michael D. Ramsey and Georgetown University law professor Stephen I. Vladeck, who have written about the provision for the National Constitution Center, a nonprofit promoting constitutional education. Yet the Trump administration didn't go to Congress for approval to launch a war against Iran's government before the United States and Israel launched a joint attack on February 28th. The country swiftly killed Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and President Donald Trump encouraged Iranians to overthrow the current regime. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost. We may have casualties, Trump said in his remarks announcing the attack. That often happens in war. So far, 6 U.S. service members have died in the conflict. After the first death, service members, U.S. officials said to expect more casualties. Trump also encouraged regime change in his remarks on the killing of Khamenei. When we're finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take, he said to the Iranian people in a video posted on social media. Many legal and military experts say those conditions amount to the type of military action that must be authorized by Congress, a full-blown war. American service people are dying. It's a war, Painter told USA Today. American president said he's trying to destroy the government of Iran. That is war, Michael Clark, an academic who focuses on military defense, said on Sky News. Some Trump administration supporters argue that the country has not gone to war. Strategic strikes are not war, Representative Anna Paulina Luna, Republican from Florida, told MS Now on March 1st. We're not at war with Iran. We're making sure they do not have the capability to harm us anymore, said Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, the Republican from Oklahoma, on CNN on March 2nd. But also on the same day, Hawk said, we didn't start this war, but under President Trump, we're finishing it. In the War Powers Resolution of 1973, sometimes called the War Powers Act, Congress expressed its view that the Constitution only allows the President to initiate military hostilities without congressional approval if there is a national emergency sparked by an attack on the United States, its property, or its personnel. In certain recent past wars, including the Iraq War, presidents have obtained explicit congressional authorization for using military force before proceeding, despite not having a formal declaration of war. Many have argued that Congress' approval of the Iraq War was based on faulty intelligence. That didn't happen here. Presidents of both parties have also launched many attacks without express congressional authorization. President Bill Clinton sent troops into Bosnia in 1995 as peacekeepers. President Barack Obama participated in a bombing campaign of Libya in 2011 to support the ouster of its leader, Muammar Gaddafi. Trump sent American troops into Venezuela in early January to seize its leader, Nicolas Maduro. None of those military interventions were expressly authorized by Congress. The War Powers Act also allows Congress to force the President to remove troops from hostilities through a resolution, and generally requires the President to end the use of armed forces after 60 days unless Congress has passed a law explicitly authorizing the military action. Yet Obama continued with military actions in Libya in 2011 after the 60-day deadline for getting congressional authorization expired, siding with lawyers in his administration who argued the action fell short of hostilities. Still, the attack on Iran's government, including working with Israel to assault the country's leader, may be taking U.S. military intervention without congressional authorization to another level. At least in Libya, the UN Security Council had authorized operations to stop Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi from killing civilians, and there were some differences there. We also didn't have any U.S. casualties or serious risk of casualties, Painter told USA Today. The War Powers Act also contained explicit requirements for the President, including consulting Congress in every possible instance before sending armed forces into hostilities, and submitting a report to Congress within 48 hours when troops have been sent to hostilities without a congressional declaration of war. Some congressional Democrats say the administration also failed to fulfill that requirement. Congress needs to authorize a war against Iran, this Trump war against Iran. We have not. Congress should be consulted with it, where we're not. And Congress needs to be notified, not after the fact, but in advance. We were not, said Senator Tim Kaine, a Democrat from Virginia. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the President has abided by the act, while also suggesting the act may not be legally binding. No presidential administration has ever accepted the War Powers Act as constitutional. Not Republican presidents, not Democratic presidents, Rubio said. All that said, we've complied with the law 100%. We're going to continue to comply with it, he added. He said he notified a select handful of congressional members about the attack in advance, consistent with long-standing practice for sensitive or covert military operations, and reported to Congress more broadly after the initial attack. International treaties that have been ratified by the U.S. Senate also carry the force of law within the United States. That includes the UN Charter, which was ratified by the Senate in 89 to 2 vote in 1945. The Charter generally authorizes the UN Security Council to determine what to do, including use of military force in response to a threat to peace, but also allows a country to unilaterally use military force in self-defense. If an armed attack occurs, some legal scholars have interpreted that provision to allow for military action if there's an immediate threat of an armed attack. That may be why the Trump administration has sometimes been suggesting in recent days that an attack could have been imminent. Rubio also, as well as House Speaker Mike Johnson, the Republican from Louisiana, both said at Capitol Hill press briefings this week that Israel was going to attack Iran with or without American involvement, and that would have sparked an attack against the United States by Iran. We knew there was going to be an Israeli attack. We knew that would precipitate an attack against American forces, and we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties, Rubio said. Because Israel is determined to act with or without the U.S., our commander-in-chief and the administration and the officials had a very difficult decision to make, Johnson said. If Israel fired upon Iran and took actions against Iran, take out the missiles, they would have immediately retaliated against the U.S. personnel and assets. The President himself, however, appeared to call that narrative into question. When asked by a reporter if Israel forced his hand, Trump said it didn't, but added that he believed Iran was going to attack the United States first. You see, we're having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion they were going to attack first. So if anything, it may have forced Israel's hand, Trump said during an Oval Office meeting with German head of state Friedrich Merz. Although Iran had been able to strike U.S. military assets in the Middle East, several nations' security experts have said that the country was likely several years away from being able to make ballistic missiles that could reach the U.S. soil. Following Trump's remark, Rubio walked back to his earlier statement, saying the United States would have attacked regardless of Israel's action. This has to happen anyway, he said. It's possible that ultimately the Trump administration wouldn't be concerned even if the attack did violate international law. A December Justice Department memo which argued that the U.S. president was permitted to order a U.S. invasion of Venezuela to capture its president, stated the international law, including the UN Charter, does not restrict the president as a matter of domestic law. Hexet dismissed international law on how to engage in military attacks during a March 2nd press conference. Unlike so many of our traditional allies who wring their hands and clutch their pearls, hemming and hawing about the use of force, America, regardless of so-called international institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history, Hexet said. No stupid rules of engagement, he added. Pentagon did not respond to USA Today's request for comment on whether Hegseth's comment are in line with the U.S. and international law, and whether the department believes rules of engagement apply to U.S. military actions in Iran. U.S. courts have repeatedly avoided weighing in on our disputes over whether the president has used military force without proper authorization, according to legal experts. Vladeck of Georgetown, for instance, has written that from the end of the Vietnam War, courts facing lawsuits over whether a president usurped congressional authority through overseas military operations have consistently avoided answering the question, said dismissing cases on the grounds that the plaintiff didn't have a right to sue or to avoid improper judicial intervention in the political process. It's not the court saying that this is an appropriate use of executive power, but that we, the judiciary, are not the place to go in order to put limits on this use of executive power, Michael Epner, a former federal prosecutor, told USA Today. Congress has its own potential checks on the president. The congressional Republicans are overwhelmingly backing Trump's attack on Iran. Senate voted 53-47 against a war powers resolution to stop the assault. Will likely meet the same fate in the House of Representatives, Johnson said during a Capitol Hill press conference. The idea we would take the ability of our commander-in-chief, the president, take his authority away right now to finish this job is a frightening prospect to me, he said. Congress could also retain the president by refusing to appropriate money for further military actions, but that too would require congressional Republicans to defect from the president. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 31 minutes after the hour.
I'm just...
Okay. Let's see what we have coming up next. We turn to the money section
Give me a money picture.
of USA Today. And our first article is titled Hidden Halls. What do 200,000 t-shirts and a suitcase full of rat poison have in common? They all end up in Scottsboro, Alabama, after airline passengers lost their luggage over the last year. Collecting those shirts is par for the course for unclaimed baggage. A family-owned business for more than half a century and receiving and reselling or donating items left in baggage lost by airlines. The company's third annual Found report details some of the quirkiest things that turned up in the last 12 months and highlights broader trends revealed by what people are packing. It's hard to get surprised by things these days, but you wonder how something like samurai swords come through, Matt Owens, Senior Vice President of Commercial Strategy at Unclaimed Baggage, told USA Today in an exclusive interview. Owens emphasized that airlines generally have a stellar record keeping track of luggage, but still, thousands of bags come through unclaimed baggage every year. Airlines do an incredible job of reuniting items with their owners, he said. What ultimately comes to us is a fraction of a percent of what traveled with. According to the founding report, T-shirts were the most common item lost in luggage this year, with nearly 210,000 of them turning up in suitcases that went to unclaimed baggage. Airlines try to reunite items with their owners for at least 90 days before sending them to unclaimed baggage. Men's T-shirts led the category of most frequently found item. Active and layering styles were close behind, tracking how travelers prioritize comfort and versatility, reports said. Other kind items retrieved were pants, jewelry, electronics, and their accessories, shoes. Owen said books were also common in checked luggage, as were trending collectibles. Can't tell you how many Labusas and Lafusas, fake Labusas, have come through, he said. Gold was also an increasingly common item in lost luggage, as travelers apparently try to hedge against broker economic uncertainty. One lost bag contained 99.9% pure gold bar, produced by Australian Perth Mint. We've seen a noticeable uptick in gold in many forms and factors, Owen said. Well, typical items such as T-shirt and charging cables made up the bulk of what's unclaimed. Baggage received in the last year, there also were many quirky one-off items, like a treasure hunt every day, Owen said. A frog purse was lost by this big travel this year. Among the most exotic items were an aforementioned suitcase full of rat poison, a 10-karat gold and diamond grill, a suitcase full of fake human bones,
Thank you.
a pair of white diamond earrings with an estimated value of $43,000. Receive anything that traveled with over the past year, Owen said. And the company rarely gets to learn why people had those items in the first place, still scratching their head over rat poison. So here's some tips for travelers. As Owen mentioned, airlines are generally very good at returning checked luggage to travelers. But if you don't want your bag to end up in a family store, there's some things you can do to make it even less likely. Some tried and true tips we found to be consistent over the years. Label your bag both inside and out, particularly on the inside in case something gets snagged and falls off on the exterior, Owen said. Add some flair, some color, something that makes it stand out. Other trackers such as Apple AirTags can be useful in tracking down your bag if it gets misplaced, although they may not prevent the issue from happening in the first place. The Found report also suggests that gate-checking luggage is more likely to be mislaid than standard checked bags. Bags checked at the gate are more prone to routine issue because they bypass normal tagging processes, the report said. If you gate check, then ask the agent to verify the tag matches your destination and keep a photo of the bag and tag. Well, what do you do to unclaimed baggage? Unclaimed baggage stores at 509 West Willow Street in Scottsboro, Alabama. If you're not planning a trip, you can shop some of their inventory online. You ready, Tom?
Did you just do the state tax?
No.
No, okay. Well, I'll do this some state tax. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry for the delay. This next article is titled, Some State Tax Refunds May Be Delayed. This is an article by Medora Lee. Tax refunds are the biggest payday of the year for most Americans. But if you live in certain states or in Washington, D.C., you may have to wait a little longer for that day. President Donald Trump's signature tax and spending bill introduced a whole new set of tax breaks for middle-class Americans in 2025. But some states are having a tough time implementing or excluding them. Software and tax forms must be updated to account for new provisions like the extra senior deduction, no tax on tips and overtime, and new auto loan interest deductions that the state has decided to follow. Meanwhile, the District of Columbia is mired in a battle with the federal government over whether or not it will conform at all to the new federal tax laws. All of this means taxpayers be warned. Your state tax refunds could be delayed. Conform, some don't conform, and some only partially conform. Accountant to Trump's new tax laws, said Richard Pond, who is a certified public accountant in San Francisco. So, question, which states are warning of tax refund delays? Taxpayers in 4 states, plus the District of Columbia, may see slower than usual tax refunds, and here's why. Idaho. In a memo, Lori Wolf, administrator to the state's Division of Financial Management, warned budget cuts reduced the temporary tax season workforce, which would slow tax processing by 12 to 24 weeks. The delays would cost taxpayers up to $7 million in increased refund interest, she said. Further down, Idaho Governor Brad Little didn't sign the state bill's tax to conform to the federal tax laws until February, after the start of the IRS January 26 tax season, and more than 58,000 Idahoans had already filed their taxes. The tax they had changed the things for the tax commission to complete, said Tax Commissioner Chairman Jeff McRae. Then we moved to New York. An Intuit TurboTax software issue, which was supposed to be fixed on February 4th, may have prevented filing and delayed some tax refunds. This according to customer complaints on various message boards and local news reports. In Oregon, until at least the end of this month, the State Department's revenue said the first refunds won't be issued until early April. The IRS was late providing necessary tax forms and information for the state program to complete its computer program systems. The Oregon Department of Review also said a small number of taxpayers claimed an incorrect amount for the Oregon Kids Credit because of a form error, although it said the discovery was made early enough that refunds should not be delayed. It warned it would adjust, if necessary, the returns of those who claimed the Oregon Kids Credit and one or more of the new federal deductions for overtime wages, tips, and new car loans. Then there's South Carolina. Revenue website tax processing taking longer than usual because it's not conforming to Trump's new federal tax laws. Taxpayers need to be extra careful and adjust their state tax filings to add back income that may have been deducted at the federal level. These may be tips, overtime, additional senior deduction, and auto loan interest, among other things. It said that if they are missed, taxpayers may have to file an amended return, which can delay a refund. Then there's a problem in Washington, D.C. The District of Columbia is embroiled in a fight with the federal government that has thrown tax filing into chaos. The district voted late last year not to conform to the new tax laws, but Congress voted to reverse that decision in the middle of the tax season. Trump signed into law on February 18th, quote, electronic and paper versions of the 2025 district income tax forms will be delayed, the Office of Tax Revenue said in its website. The D.C. Attorney General filed an opinion arguing that Congress's reversal isn't valid because the deadline had passed to make such a move, among other things. If the dispute doesn't get resolved soon, D.C. Chief Financial Officer Glenn Lee said tax filing deadlines could be pushed to September and disrupt $400 million in cash flow for D.C. government. Then there's another additional plus. Nearly 90% of taxpayers take the standards deduction, which is either $15,750 if Congress is right, or $15,000 if D.C. wins, it said. And then the last thing is the local child tax credit is either zero if Congress is correct, or $420 per child if D.C. gets its way, said the nonpartisan research and educational organization. And in conclusion to this particular article, taxpayers need to be extra careful and adjust their state tax filings to add back income that may have been deducted at the federal level. So be sharp.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 44 minutes after the hour. Our next article is titled Bias Claims by White House Men Rise. David Duval had been a senior vice president at Novant Health for 5 years, July 2018, when the multi-billion-dollar health system told him he was going in a different direction. After his firing, Norvath Health promoted two of Duval's deputies, a white woman and a black woman, take over his duties while it conducted a search for his successor. A black woman was appointed to permanently replace him. Duval sued in federal court in November 2019, alleging he was let go because of a push to diversify the leadership ranks. At trial 2 years later, Duval presented evidence he received strong performance reviews and gained national recognition for the marketing program he developed for Norvath Health. His manager testified he had 7 white men as direct reports at the start of 2018, but none by the time of the trial. His former employer said Duval was terminated for performance issues, including walking off stage while giving a public presentation. Norvath Health said he was given a job coach and more public speaking opportunities, but Duval delegated those. The jury sided with Duval. Federal appeals court later upheld a $4.8 million award in 2024. Duval was a bellwether case that put the spotlight on high-profile lawsuits in which white men accused their employers of racial bias, claiming they were dismissed or denied opportunities so companies could make room for more women, people of color through diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Legal experts say the ruling was an early shot across the bow for diversity initiatives that are exclusive rather than inclusive. Even though men, and white men in particular, dominate corporate America, these cases have ramped up as anti-DEI activists and the Trump administration taught corporate diversity. While statistically rare, research shows that white men still file discrimination claims just at a lower rate than other groups. White workers make up about 2/3 of the U.S. workforce, but only account for about 10% of all race discrimination claims, according to data USA Today obtained in 2023 from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. A study from the Center for Employment and Equity at the University of Massachusetts found that white men filed about 9% of race discrimination claims from 2012 to 16. The view that unlawful and woke DEI policies have harmed white Americans, and white men in particular, was central to President Donald Trump's presidential campaign and now his second term of office. Trump administration has urged white men to come forward with bias complaints, upending decades of civil rights policy that once prioritized the rights of women and people of color. The EEOC had made this DEI enforcement a top priority. The agency charged with fighting workplace discrimination is investigating Nike's diversity policies for allegedly discriminating against white employees, and it sued a Coca-Cola company distributor for allegedly discriminating against male employees by organizing a woman-only retreat. Signaling that the Commission is poised to pursue more enforcement actions, EEOC Chair Andrea Dukas warned Fortune 500 leaders that the Trump administration will not tolerate, quote, discrimination against certain races or groups, end quote. All citizens are entitled to equal treatment under the law and therefore should have equality of opportunity in every sector of our society, including the workplace, she wrote in a letter in February. Even before Trump took office, reverse discrimination lawsuits were on the upswing. Now lawyers predict the Trump administration's enforcement efforts will spur even more biased complaints from white men. In June, the Supreme Court made those laws easier to bring, unanimously ruling that anti-discrimination law applies equally to everyone regardless of race or gender. Discrimination is unlawful whether the victim is black, white, male, or female. Nick Berry, senior counsel at the advocacy group America First Legal, told USA Today. Many have hesitated to come forward because they fear retaliation or backlash. But the tide is finally turning, and momentum is building around the simple principle that merit, not race or sex, must govern workplace decisions. Stephen Miller, a senior portfolio manager, recently sued Bausch and Lomb, the billionaire employer Carl Icahn, alleging he was denying a board seat because he's white. According to the complaint filed in December in a Miami federal court, Bausch and Lomb required one of the two board directors nominated by Icahn Capital to be diverse, meaning non-white. Bausch and Lomb and Acura Enterprise did not respond to requests for comment. Undoubtedly, employers will soon experience the impact of this messaging, Charles Plum, a lawyer with the McAfee and Taft law firm in Oklahoma, said. We should anticipate an uptick in reverse employment discrimination investigations by federal agents and lawsuits brought against employers. Like those brought by women and people of color, these discrimination lawsuits face tough hurdles and long odds, but some white workers have had success in court. New Jersey jury awarded $1.3 million to two white educators who alleged they were passed over for vice principal posts in Newark high schools. Starbucks was ordered to pay $25 million to Shannon Phillips, a regional director, claimed she was fired for being white. Sadly, it's with the slimmest of odds that employees get their day in court, let alone prevail, Duvall told USA Today. I hope my nearly 6-year journey is helpful to others who lose their livelihood unfairly. His lawyer, Luke Largess, said Duvall didn't set out to become a face of the anti-DEI movement. He supported Norvath's health diversity efforts during his tenure there, Largess said. Norvath Health told USA Today in a statement that ensuring equal employment opportunities is a foundational aspect of Norvath Health's culture. Will continue to vehemently disagree with the findings of liability. For Duvall, standing up for himself in court came at a steep price. Told USA Today the litigation caused immeasurable damage to my employment, my professional reputation, and my career. After Norvath, Duvall landed a job that paid more and included a signing bonus. He was fired not long after he filed his discrimination lawsuit in November 2019. Even so, headhunters contacted him with interest from 4 employers. His phone stopped ringing when Duvall informed them about the lawsuit. Today, the high-powered marketing executive works as a consultant.
The last article is titled CVS Threatens Closing if a Tennessee Bill Passes. CVS warned it would close 134 pharmacy locations in Tennessee if the state enacts legislation that would prevent co-ownership of pharmacies and pharmacy benefit managers. CVS said it would close all 134 if pharmacy locations in Tennessee takes aim at pharmacy giants' business model. A Tennessee state senator sponsored a bill that would prohibit companies from owning retail pharmacies and pharmacy benefit managers. CVS employs more than 2,000 at 134 retail pharmacy locations in Tennessee. Pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, have drawn bipartisan scrutiny nationwide as the Trump administration, Congress, and states seek ways to lower prices on prescription drugs. PBMs act as middlemen between drug manufacturers, health insurance companies, and retail pharmacies. Health insurers and employers that offer health insurance benefits use PBMs to negotiate prices and manage prescription drugs. This legislation separates pharmacy benefit managers from owning or controlling the pharmacies. They reimburse or steer patients toward other pharmacies, a pharmacist said in a statement. It does not eliminate PBMs, it does not close pharmacies, or reduce access to medications. Harshbarger said the legislation would not require pharmacy closures. Companies that own a PBM and pharmacies could close to divest of their business to comply with the legislation, he said. CVS spokesman Amy Thibault said the company is committed to work with policymakers, but she said the Tennessee bill does not address common PBM industry issues such as spread pricing, reimbursement of formularies, the list of drugs insurance plans cover. The only thing the legislation does is force the closure of 134 CVS pharmacies, Thibault said. It's bad for Tennessee. For more than 1.5 million patients we serve here, for more than 2,000 colleagues who will lose good-paying jobs. In addition to closing pharmacies, CVS said it would shut down 25 in-store minute clinic locations that provide primary care health service facilities. In addition to closing pharmacies, in conclusion, CVS said it would shut down 25 in-store minute clinic locations and provide primary care health services that would shut down.
The last article
Okay.
titled SSI Fund Forecast to Run Dry Sooner Than Expected. This doesn't sound good.
No.
The clock is ticking faster toward the depletion of Social Security's trust fund that helps fund benefits for about 70 million Americans. Congressional Budget Office said this month is expected the Old Age Survivors Insurance Trust Fund, one of the two funds used to pay Social Security benefits, would run dry in 2032, a year earlier than expected. CBO, which provides budgetary analysis to Congress, estimated last year that the trust fund would be emptied by 2033. When the fund's depleted, Social Security recipients could see an average 28% cut to monthly retirement and survivor benefits, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget said. Previously, CFR-FB predicted a typical couple retiring just after insolvency would face an $18,400 cut in annual benefits. Social Security had been a path toward insolvency for some time, but over the past year, politicians have made its financial condition even worse, CRFB wrote in its report. You're listening to a reading of articles from USA Today for the 9th day of March on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are Tom Scanlon and
Tom Travers.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from USA Today. Your readers remain Tom Scanlon and...
Tom Travers.
Okay. As always, we turn to sports, and our first article is on the World Baseball Classic. That USA-Mexico showdown should be epic. Dateline Houston. Preliminaries are over, with Team USA easily dismissing the first two cupcakes in its path. Now comes the heavyweight bout that everyone wants to see. We the Americans against Team Mexico in front of a raucous, sold-out crowd March 9th at Dakin Park, with the winner virtually guaranteed to finish atop Pool B in this World Classic. I know people are definitely looking forward to the U.S.-Mexico game because they have a fantastic team over there, U.S. Captain Aaron Judge said. We can't wait. The boys are pumped. Team USA at 2-0 set the stage on March 7th by routing Great Britain 9-1, just 24 hours after thrashing Brazil 15-5. Mexico, with a record of 1-0, was scheduled to play yesterday against Brazil, while Team USA had the day off. USA had their hands full with them in this tournament. The last couple of installments of it, U.S. manager Mark DeRosa said, certainly haven't forgotten about that. It's a memory DeRosa would love to erase. Mexico has beaten Team USA 3 times in the last 4 WC events, including an 11-5 victory 2023 at Chase Field in Phoenix. Yeah, I won't forget that game, said Kyle Schwarber, who broke open the winning mark in the 5th inning with an upper deck home run. That's pretty cool when never seen the Arizona Stadium sold out electric feeling. Look forward to our next matchup here. Certainly, while the Americans respect Mexico, there's no fear, or even the slightest bit of apprehension. They believe they're the most talented team in the WBC and are looking forward to proving it, winning the championship after losing to Japan in the finals in 2023. Honestly, I think we have the best 30 players in the world in that clubhouse, DeRosa said, and they're coming together as a team. I don't really think it's going to be a matter of who Mexico starts. We're going to put up a lineup out there and get after it. Mexico, which lost to Japan in the semifinals 2003, can certainly pick up some valuable tips from the USA's victory over Great Britain. Great Britain was actually leading 1-0 after Nate Eaton stunned 2-time Cy Young winner Ateri Scavo by hitting the first pitch of the game over the left field wall for a homer. It's the only mistake Scavo made, but entering the bottom of the 5th inning, Britain still led 1-0, with the U.S. producing just 2 harmless singles. I was sitting on top step with third base coach Dino Abel in the inning before, DeRosa said. He goes, we just need something like a walk, something, and explode. Boom, with 1 out in the 5th inning, it happened. Ernie Clement hit a routine ground ball to Great Britain third baseman Evan Johnson. Clement hustled down the line and Johnson airmailed the throw. Clement was safe. Manager Brad Marciello took out reliever Jager Victor, who had been dominant for 1.3 innings, and brought in Andre Scrub. But before Victor left the game, he did a little trash talking, feeling pretty good about himself after striking out Aaron Judge, Bryce Harper, and Gunnar Henderson in the 4th inning, and then Roman Anthony to lead off the 5th inning. When the reliever turned and looked in our dugout and saw a couple of choice words, DeRosa said, I think that lit up the lineup as well. Just like that, Team USA offense went off. Pete Crow Armstrong doubled Schwarber homered. Alex Bergman doubled. Henderson hit a 2-run double. With 3 unearned runs, the U.S. went up 5-1 in the 5th, made it 8-1 in the 6th, and cruised the rest of the way. I think the emotional side of that is we're not wearing across our chest USA, Schwarber said. And obviously the guys we have on our team, we've done a really good job of coming together. We know it's short, but for us to go where we want to go, we all need to play together and go from there. Next up, Mexico, respect for them, DeRosa said. I was in this in 2023 and they woke us up in a big way. Ton of respect for the way they played the game. But back in 2023, Paul Skenes was still in college. Now he's defending NL Cy Young winner and will be starting for Team USA. Obviously, it's going to be a big atmosphere, Skane said. Be a good chance to see where I'm at, too. But the biggest thing is just going out there and executing. I'm looking forward to it.
This next article is titled Off-Season Chumps. 6 teams that may disappear. Article by Nate Davis. Quite a few NFL teams are mixed out this year, not maxed out like the Baltimore Ravens, who will soon be enjoying the services of Pro Bowl pass pusher Max Crosby. Not max out like the Las Vegas Raiders, who now have 2 first-round draft picks in 2026 and 27 and scads of salary cap space. But maxed out, that is, they don't appear to have the cap resources to sign or trade for a player of Crosby's caliber. This week, as NFL free agency kicks into high gear, the negotiating window for players on expiring deals set to open at noon Eastern Time on March 9th, while trades and new contracts officially begin at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on March 11th. Furthermore, some teams not only lack spending bandwidth, but also, at this point, appreciable draft capital. But you never know. 2 apparently resource-deficient squads, namely the Buffalo Bills and the Chicago Bears, agreed to a trade of wide receiver DJ Moore that improved the Bills' roster and the Bears' draft outlook. Here are 6 teams that seem to be in a serious bind in 2026 when it comes to trying to keep up with the Ravens and even the Raiders in terms of trying to upgrade their existing rosters, their salary cap, projections, courtesy of over the cap, which could further exacerbate their issues behind center unless new team president Matt Ryan pulls a Phillip Rivers in September, given injured Mike Penix Jr., who has a knee injury. He may not be ready to play when the 2026 season starts. Otherwise, what happens? Ryan and the new coach Kevin Stefanski currently have only about $8 million in cap space and as weak a draft position as any organization in 2026. Just 5 selections, none among the first 47, after trading their first-rounder to Los Angeles Rams during last year's draft. How about the Dallas Cowboys? Owner Jerry Jones recently said, "I can see us being aggressive in free agency," as he does. Yet, America's team is currently locked into a $27 million franchise tag with wide receiver George Pickens, even though giving him an extension would free up room. But these are Jones's Cowboys, and as things stand now, they basically have no cap room, already forced into a series of contractual restructures for them and for their stars in order to shoehorn Pickens' tag under the cap. And while Dallas does own 2 first-round draft picks this year, one courtesy of last year's infamous Micah Parsons trade, the Cowboys' 3rd selection of the 2026 draft is currently slotted in the middle of round 4. The trade for Quinnen Williams sending their 2nd-rounder to New York Jets, and the Pickens deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers coming at the expense of this year's 3rd-rounder. Then the poor Detroit Lions pop up. They're in the middle of the pack, though they lack a 3rd-rounder due to a previous deal with the Jaguars. Roster-wise, they don't have much cap space, even as they part with former linchpins like running back David Montgomery, and Taylor Decker. And with extending running back Jamil Gibbs' contract a priority, General Manager Brad Holmes may not have much financial flexibility for many consequential veteran pickups in 2026. Green Bay Packers, well, they got Parsons, and hopefully he'll be ready to replay and play and the opening day as he continues to recover from last season's torn ACL. But the Pack don't have a first-round pick or a selection among the top 51. After spending the money to get the pass rusher, GM Brian Gutkowski also has no free agent spending money ahead of the market opening. Indianapolis Colts, even as he offloads players like L.B. Zaire Franklin, GM Chris Ballard is basically in a race against the clock to run it back, at least the early stages of the 2025 season. And the article goes on to say quarterback Daniel Jones is currently saddled with a $37.8 million transition tag. Barring a new deal for him in the coming days, it's going to be tough for the cap-strapped Colts to re-sign deep threat wide receiver Alec Pierce too. Going down to Jacksonville Jags, they pulled off the shocker of the 2025 draft, trading up to number 2 overall for running back, cornerback Travis Hunter. Oops, but that means the defending AFC team champs have no first rounder this year, nor a slot among the draft's top 55. Second-year General Manager James Gladstone is also tight against the cap. Yet, on the verge of losing linebacker Devin Lloyd and running back Travis Etienne Jr. in the free agency. In the final bad news paragraph, the Jags were rumored to be among the suitors for Crosby, so maybe Gladstone has an ace up his sleeve, but it's hard to see him executing any big-ticket moves in 2026. You have to be a real fan to follow all those things.
All that stuff, yeah. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 13 minutes after the hour. Our next article is titled, Pooling College TV Rights Proposed. In a move that could lead to massive change in college sports, 2 U.S. senators from opposing political parties have proposed an amendment to the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961 that would allow colleges to pool their media rights in an effort to grow revenue and stabilize college sports. Proposed legislation is bipartisan, came on March 6 from Senator Maria Cantwell, a Democrat from Washington, and Senator Eric Schmidt, Republican from Missouri, both members of the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. They released a discussion of the draft of the College Sports Competitive Act, which would amend the Sports Broadcasting Act, a 65-year-old law that exempted professional sports leagues from antitrust laws and allowed them to pool their television rights, but didn't do the same for college sports. Proposal comes as a college sport faces a crisis of huge new expenses from revenue sharing with players, up to $20.5 million per school, starting in 2025 under terms of the House versus NCAA legal settlement. If we don't address the revenue problem, college sports as we know it and love them will slowly disappear, Schmidt said in a statement. This is a serious problem. Congress needs to provide real solutions to help alleviate the pressure being put on schools. Allowing conferences and universities to voluntarily pool and sell their media rights together can unlock new revenue streams while preserving the broad-based athletic programs that make college sports the institution it is today. The bill would unlock collective media deals to potentially generate billions in new revenue for college sports, according to the release from the committee. It would allow colleges and conferences to voluntarily participate in the pooled media rights. But not everybody agrees with this as a possible solution. The Big Ten and Southeastern conferences have pushed back against this idea and recently commissioned a study that said pooling media rights wouldn't produce more revenue. Those two conferences are also the two richest in college sports and have a stake in keeping the status quo instead of sharing revenue with other leagues. The draft bill aims to ensure that all schools receive more media rights revenue than they received in 2024-25 academic year, while giving all schools a percentage of new revenue. It also allows performance-based awards for schools that drive up viewership revenue and reach the playoffs. To address the concerns of the richest leagues, proposed to create a 14-member board that fairly represents the institutions that generate the most revenue. Caldwell said it would help women's sports and ensure they won't be cut. With women's sports, Olympic sports, and other sports losing scholarship and roster slots every year, it's time to reverse the damage, Cantwell said in a statement. Opening the Sports Broadcast Act to college sports allows more revenue to be generated from sports viewing, and that new revenue can go towards supporting and growing opportunities in women's and Olympic sports, while still protecting consumers from being overcharged by having sports events behind paywalls. Fans should not have to pay extra to watch their home teams play on TV. You ready?
No.
Okay. Let's see what we have coming up next here.
Yeah.
Our next article is titled, oh, this is interesting, a women's college wrestling article. Don't see much of that around. McKendree tops Iowa for first is the title. Coral Villa, Idaho. Kennedy Blades, one of the world's first brightest wrestling phenoms, was in bed resting after the NCAA Women's Championship semifinals before her final match on March 7th. Blades was mentally preparing for her final match, telling herself to have fun, get the job done, and remind herself why she came to Iowa in the first place. Kentucky's why you came to college, Blades said, to win an NCAA title. Blades didn't need to wrestle in college. In fact, she initially chose not to out of high school by picking Arizona State for her education and training with the Sunkist Kids Wrestling Club. She's already one of the top stars in the United States wrestling, with an Illinois high school state title, Fargo titles, and Olympic trials runner-up at the age of 17. After qualifying in the second time around for the U.S. Olympic team 2024, she started to ponder what else she could do. She considered Iowa in high school, and given the growth of the program, she decided to make a change and make a run at the NCAA title. The goal became a reality on March 7th, while she won an NCWWC title last year. Having the official NCAA branding on her title meant that much more. It was not a dream realized, because the dream never existed for kids like Blades growing up. But after years of growth, efforts from those in the wrestling community, and more, the NCAA sanctioned the sport. Blades joined Iowa teammates Val Osorio and Kylie Welker as the NCAA champions on March 7th at Extreme Arena. By tournament's end, the Hawkeyes fell short to a strong McKendree Bearcat squad, while Iowa was the lone Power 4 program and was expected by many to roll. Tournament favored Bearcats outpaced Iowa 171-166. This season ended with a bitter taste providing added motivation this off-season for all 10 Iowa wrestlers who can return next season. How disappointing for the program, the Hawkeyes relished the accomplishment of becoming an NCAA sport. The inaugural NCAA championships had all the wrestling fans come to expect from a national tournament, whether it was the thrilling team race, North Central and Iowa fans building the rivalry with dual chants at one another, and high-flying action. It all produced an event that was entertaining from the first whistle. Different styles, the grittiness, the fight, all that came out. Iowa coach Clarissa Chun said, "That's what's really fun, to see the growth of the sport and the depth of the sport." Like Blades, Welker didn't need to be a college wrestler either. Blades made the U.S. Olympic team, won silver in Paris summer of '24, and became a superstar in wrestling with her trademark suplex without a single college match under her belt. Welker, a multi-time age group world champion and senior world bronze medalist, had all the tools needed to make that happen outside of college wrestling too. They chose Iowa not just to further their wrestling, but to experience something they never thought would be possible. When they watched the men's NCAA championships, they didn't see that avenue for them in their wrestling careers. And the last paragraph, on March 7th, what was never thought possible became reality. Iowa didn't get what it wanted in Coralville with an NCAA double-team title, but the Hawkeyes got to experience the thrill that comes with an NCAA championship event and secure individual glory. It sounds a little more official with the branding on the trophy. I've never had thought that I would be able to become an NCAA champ, but it's been a nice ring to it, Welker said.
Do you want to give me an article or take another one? I'm all screwed up.
That's his next article.
Yeah, no, I know you get that. Mine's
Okay, and the last article for this section is a World Baseball Classic. It says, utility man Clement is an unlikely star. See what this is about, baseball. For the first 4 innings of the World Baseball Classic game on March 7th, Team USA struggled to consistently generate offense while trailing Great Britain 1-0. It looked like upset was brewing until unlikely hero stepped up. The catalyst was infielder Ernie Clement, one of 2 players in the USA starting lineup who has never been named a Major League Baseball player all-star. At the plate with 1 out in the bottom of the 5th inning, Clement connected on a 2-strike pitch and put it into play. Great Britain third baseman Ivan Johnson overthrew first base. Clement hustled around and was safe at first, cracking the door open wide enough for the Americans to start a rally. Clement moved to third base on a Pete Crow Armstrong double, then scored the USA's tying run with gutsy base running when he slid home on a wild pitch. The door blasted off its hinges when the U.S. scored 5 runs that inning, grabbing a lead it never relinquished in a 9-1 win against Great Britain at Dakin Park. Clement, the Toronto Blue Jays utility man, scored 3 runs and hit 1 for 3 in the win. He took 5 plate appearances, saw 18 pitches, and reached base 4 times, courtesy of an error, a single and 2 walks. A team's ceiling often is defined by its depth, which is exactly what Team USA manager Mark DeRosa had in mind when he recruited Clement as a plug-and-play infielder to join a roster that constitutes an embarrassing of riches. He's deserving of being in the room, DeRosa said. I wanted to get Gunnar Henderson and him like in the lineup. I felt like coming out of Arizona, felt like everyone was worthy of a start. And I wanted to get these guys rolling, and they deserved it. The gutsy performance further underscored Clement's dramatic career transformation from underproducing fringe player in danger of falling out of the majors to heroic player performer into a Team USA contributor. If you told me back then I would be doing this, I would be pretty surprised, Clement said. But I always believed in myself, and I've always put the work in, and it's nice to see it being rewarded. Right. You kind of run into what All-Star is going to be in the lineup. Well, it never turns out the way you think it might go. So stay tuned for more surprises.
You're listening to a reading of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 1:27, which means we'll switch to the entertainment section of USA Today. And our first article is a television preview. Rooster lets Carroll strut his charms. Steve Carroll is in this lovable goofball era, and he should lean right in. The comedian and star, best known for being the world's funniest boss for 7 seasons of NBC's beloved sitcom The Office, has run the gamut in his long career from hero to cartoon villain. From a cringy 40-year-old virgin to a creepy TV host on Apple's The Morning Show. But at this point in his tenure on our screens, Carroll's unmistakably at his best when he's the underdog you can root for. That's why the actor is so well matched in his new HBO comedy Rooster, which airs on Sundays at 10 Eastern Time and has 4 stars. A tweet take on the quirky community on a modern college campus, Rooster casts Carroll as an adorable and adoring dad to an adult daughter going through a rough time. Created by the king of optimism, Bill Lawrence, Rooster has the same kind of glass half full tone as his celebrated comedies, Ted Lasso and Shrinking. Whether it can rise to the popularity and success of those two remains to be seen. The show takes its paltry title from Carroll's character, Greg Russo, a self-proclaimed beach read novelist whose airport bookstores bestsellers are about a detective called Rooster. We meet this unassuming, bumbling man in his 60s visiting the campus of a liberal arts school where the savvy students talk circles around his old-fashioned sensibilities and insecurities. He's really there, however, for his daughter Katie, played by Charlie Clive, a professor who is going through a messy divorce after her ex, Archie, played by Phil Dunster, a.k.a. Jimmy Tarrant of Lasso. A fellow professor in the tiny community has an affair with a postgraduate student. Katie doesn't want her dad's advice or help, but Greg is the kind of guy who just can't leave her to misery all alone. Fresh off a divorce himself, he does everything in his limited power to help Katie, even if sometimes he makes things worse. He eventually takes a job at the school, pushed by coal-plunging dude bro, college president Walter, played by John C. McKinney, alum of Lawrence's Scrubs, keeps him and Katie in the same circle indefinitely. There are a multitude of absurd hijinks and shenanigans, really the only words applicable here, that led to Greg's decision to stay and inevitably fill each episode. He fumbles over almost everything in his new life, from parenting a grown-up daughter to surprising flirtation to walk up a steep hill in new shoes. Carol, now a silver fox, as the characters describe him at home, in tweeds, and making kids these days jokes is deeply endearing. It's all the sweet parts of Michael Scott with none of the incompetence, idiocy, or casual cruelty. Okay, Greg, sometimes it's a bit incompetent. It's a good look for Carol, who has taken on some rather unpleasant characters in recent outings, such as Netflix' The Four Seasons, HBO's film Mountainhead. The actor Inga Ipsidotter Lilius and Ellie Fanning, the film rips open the emotional wounds that are so often left by one's parents. Skarsgård won a Golden Globe for his subtly heartbreaking performance, which is quite daring in its lack of vanity. Director and co-writer Joachim Trier says, Stallone is very different from Gustav. Even urged me, don't idolize Gustav, make him narcissistic. Then ultimately we peel back the layers and see a man who's craving contact. Despite the surface level parallels of being a working artist, Skarsgård doesn't recognize himself in the distance as strange Gustav. The actor has 8 children, all ages 13 through 49, with a screenwriter wife, Megan Everett, and ex-spouse physician Mai Seigert, whose whole family lives in the same neighborhood, so he sees all of his kids regularly. More than 3 decades, they spent 4 months filming, 8 months a year at home changing diapers, Skarsgård said. Learned an important lesson that each child is different from the next. Some need more attention, some don't want any. There are 8 different characters there. Acknowledges no parent is perfect. Even when I'm home, I might be thinking about my job, and I might be present enough to have guilt for certain things I've done. But in general, I don't feel guilty toward my kids. I don't think my job has hurt them, as I said. In fact, I think it's enriched them, brought them along in many times, and taken them out of school to be on set with me. It's an interesting subject, how much you can get from a parent whose artist to give up his art. You're giving up a part of yourself. Skarsgård was born in Gothenburg, Sweden. As the oldest of 5 sibs, his parents laid a foundation built on respect and equality. I knew I was smarter than some kids and stupider than others, he recalls with a chuckle, but that didn't affect the value of me as a human being. Father fostered an early interest in civil rights and politics, and Skarsgård applied to be a Swedish diplomat in the vein of Dag Hammarskjöld. When I grew up, I realized that most diplomats don't have a voice of their own. Skarsgård said their megaphones for their government are also contributing to a lot of the mess in the world. Regardless, diplomacy is still much better than aggression, and the actor finds it essential to speak up about social injustice. You can't ignore the world, he said. The threat to democracy, the widening gap between the rich and the poor, it's a lot to think about. Skarsgård doubled into acting as a teenager, primarily worked with European directors, including Bo Witterberger and Lars von Trier, until his Hollywood breakthrough, 1977 drama Good Will Hunting. But it was a 1990s Holocaust drama, Good Evening, Mr. Wallenberg, that changed how Skarsgård approached his career. Subject matter was unbearable. He felt responsible to honor the people who lived through it. I don't sleep at night. I had a personal crisis, Skarsgård called. After that film, everything felt worthless to me. But after a while, I became more lighthearted in my choices. He eventually stepped into the Marvel and Star Wars franchise and even belted out ABBA tunes, and that's ABBA tunes in the Mamma Mia movies. He likes to play the villain. He's done in Dune and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. He wanted to make them more complicated than they are and give the audience a feeling of danger, Skarsgård said. Throughout the years, I realized that not everything is so damn important. You can always get too pretentious. Mamma Mia is not worth anything less. It's just entertainment. In 2020, Skarsgård suffered a stroke that affected his short-term memory. As a result, he was prompted dialogue through an earpiece while making sentimental value. Can't remember the lines, which is a pity, of course, he said. The rhythm of a scene is very important to me. How you talk and what pauses you make. Now, it's very complicated. Actor's ready for time to detox after award season, but he's eager for just another juicy part like Gustav. I don't think I have more certain amount of time left to do what I want, Siskart said ruefully. Become a little greedier in that sense. On the other hand, I'm 74 years old and there are not many roles out there. The actor turned 75 this summer. There's no plans for a blowout bash. What are you going to do, celebrate that you're closer to death? Harsbrough said. It's a milestone year, sure, but just numbers, and numbers are an invitation more than anything. I hope I won't lose my facilities too long before I die. It's my only fear. I've already had some, but I can handle those. And lastly, he says he can't live without books, but I'm having trouble reading because of the stroke. I lost my train of thought and have political discussions. I'm not that funny anymore. But I'm not sad about it, says Gary Edge with a smile. I feel my life has been so rich and wonderful. 8 good kids, 2 wives, and an enormous amount of fun. When I was 50, I thought I might as well die now. Still would have had a better life than most people. So, it's not unfair.
Hey, good for him. This next one is a movie, and it's a parent guide. This article is titled, Hoppers Jumps into the Family Film Pond. And there's a picture of a couple of stuffed animals here. Mabel, voiced by Parker Curta, learns the way of the pond from King George in Pixar's Hoppers. The following post discusses minor spoilers and plot points for the new Pixar movie Hoppers. So beware if you want to go in cold. How many children are really into movies that deal with urban development and city environmental policy? Leave it to Pixar, though, to make it hilarious. The iconic animation studio has gone the talking animal route many times, but never like the sci-fi comedy Hoppers in theaters now. A rage-filled teen activist gets her mind hopped into a robotic beaver, and learns way more about the animal kingdom that she or anyone else ever knew. And with chatty critters around, it's going to be to strongly appeal to youngsters. But is Hoppers okay for the little ones? Because this Pixar film is very different from your average episode of Bluey, here's what caregivers should know going into the new animated movie. What is Hoppers all about? 19-year-old animal lover Mabel, voiced by Jerry John Hamm, when, as part of his re-election campaign, he wants to construct a highway overpass on the glade where she spent much of her childhood. Because a beaver is a keystone species, if Mabel's able to get a beaver to build a dam here, the highway project would be scrapped. Mabel discovers that her college biology professor, Kathy Najmi, has developed a newfangled technology that can transfer a human's mind into an animal robot. Got that? Human mind into an animal robot, a beaver. The younger hops into a mechanical beaver, which begins a wild journey into befriending beaver leader King George, played by Bobby Moynihan, and learning that the 3 rules of the pond are: Rule 2, when you gotta eat, eat. Mabel is embroiled in a struggle between human and animal kind to the point where she has to help her nemesis after Mayor Jerry gets targeted for extinction, aka squished, by Animal Council. What is the age rating here? Hoppers is rated PG by the Motion Picture Association for action/peril, some scary images, and mild language. When it comes to language, that's a pretty good descriptor because it's mainly along the lines of animal-hemmed euphemisms, including flap around and find out. There's also quite a few action sequences, including one car chase scene where a bunch of birds fly in a great white shark named Diane Vanessa Bayer to take out Mayor Jerry. The third act does have some horror, however, movie elements, and a destructive wildfire threatening some of the main characters. That might bother the littlest film fans. Just know they might need their hands held through these scenes. How long is the movie, you ask? The run time is 1 hour and 45 minutes. Hoppers moves at a good clip throughout, thanks to its action scenes and other bits, such as a bunch of beavers partying and building a dam to lover boys working for the weekend. Is it inappropriate for little ones? Well, Hoppers is a supremely clever animated outing that melds environmental messaging, yes, a respect for animals and nature, and a big heart with Avatar jokes, a Back to the Future science vibe, and nods to other Pixar flicks, such as Finding Nemo and Up. It also is one of the funniest movies in the Pixar canon. Why? Because of its quirky, subversive, and surprisingly dark sense of humor. That'll play well with parents as well as teens and tweens, though it may go over the heads of some small kids or even concern a few. A lizard smacking emoji on a phone is okay for all ages. Okay. Death in the animal kingdom is treated matter-of-factly and comedically. Mabel gets in trouble with some animals when she saves a beaver from being eaten by a bear. But for them, that's just the way things are. Mabel also gets in trouble. Why? For unnaturally squishing an important insect in an amusing scene that most animals will find relatable. Oh, no, most adults will find relatable. But there are wild moments, too, when a human robot, controlled by an animal character, has his fake face ripped off and threatens to kill a crowd of people. Again, it's played for laughs, but could bother little ones. Overall, there's more for little ones than not. For one example, it's made clear that kids should not bite people. Little Mabel grasps that early on, yet a more important theme is the third pond rule. What is that? We're all in this together. That's a lesson humans and animals learn in Hoppers, and a youngster of all ages and their parents should heed this as well, namely that we're all in this together. And the final paragraphs. Where is it playing? Hoppers is in theaters nationwide. Those hopping to see it at home will have to wait, however. If it follows a path similar to other recent Disney animated films such as Zootopia 2, Hoppers should be arriving on digital video on-demand platform by early to mid-May and streaming on Disney Plus this summer in June or early July. So, hold on if you're really excited about Hoppers.
Here's another movie review. The Bride blows up usual Frankenstein formula. There have been so many remakes and revamps of the Frankenstein mythos. There's even one for a bunch of Oscars. It's pretty neat when a newcomer offers just a whiff of originality. And in that vein, writer and director Maggie Gyllenhaal's punk rock twist on The Bride of Frankenstein takes a flaming torch to the mold. With Jessie Buckley and Christian Bale as the film's monsters, The Bride, at 4 stars and rated R in theaters now, is a wild and untamed thing that reflects its patchwork creation. There are elements borrowed from B-movie horror flicks, crime dramas, Broadway musicals, and love stories, mashed together in bold and bizarre strokes. While imperfections exist in the violent, genre-defying romance, they don't dim Glenn Hall's clear-eyed passion, grand ideas, and big swings spattered on the screen. Hall unleashes her cool swerve right from the start. Mary Shelley, played by Buckley, author of the classic Gothic novel and mother to all things Frankenstein, is alive, kind of, seen in close-up from an ethereal hereafter. Mary opines about wanting to go forward with the story she didn't get to tell with her 19th century book. Like most creators with a hit, she wants a sequel. Mary begins by forcing her spirit into the body of Ida, also played by Buckley, a young woman who runs with some shady types in 1936 Chicago, takes a spill down a flight of stairs, left broken and deceased. Enter Frank, played by Vale, a large and imposing figure who's just taken the name of his father, Frankenstein, and has endured a century of loneliness wandering the earth. He's in Chi-Town asking scientist Dr. Euphoronius, played by Annette Bening, to make him a mate. After some initial misgivings, she's on board and they dig up Ida and use the doctor's lab creation, a mysterious inky black substance, to bring her back to life. Frank is enamored with the restricted bride and hopeless romantic of sorts, but he isn't the most confident guy. The new love interest doesn't even remember her name, so it's not exactly a love at first sight connection. However, a close bond begins to form after a night out where Frank gruesomely kills a pair of ruffians who threaten the bride, and they go on the run from the cops, including a tired detective played by Peter Sarsgaard and his more capable partner, Penelope Cruz. Barring some unforeseen injustice, Buckley's going to win the Best Actress Oscar this month, and what she does in The Bride, essentially playing three characters, is just as impressive as her heartfelt Hamnet role. Irish actress is crazed as Mary, demure as Ida, and a force of nature as the bride, rocking her bright orange dress and black veil and her white coif. While Buckley's bride finds new agency in their road trip, Bale's Frank is a complementary partner in crime, exuding a tough guy swagger but also man-child innocence as a vulnerable brute with a poet's soul. Gyllenhaal lovingly crafts this scarred, stapled, and eccentric Bonnie and Clyde duo, then tosses them into a landscape of curiosities that match their weird. And bonkers works for her. Gyllenhaal's first directorial effort, psychological drama The Lost Daughter, showed a potential for wanting to tweak a genre formula. For The Bride, she's just out to break stuff. Some of the plot gets a little head-scratchy if you think about it too hard, but the story, and the best story, beats inspire chaos over everything else. Frank and the bride meet a Hollywood icon, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, and danced with an exciting fury and a homage to young Frankenstein. They run afoul of a mobster, played by Zlatko Buric, who cuts out women's tongues. A female army rises up to wear a black smudge on their face to match the bride's, a stain made by the stuff that gave her new life being passed on to those needing a symbol for their fight. And with her monstrously empowered bride, Gyllenhaal cements itself as a filmmaker, something to say, and a mad genius who demands to be heard. It's kind of weird.
Yes.
Well, maybe a little more than kind of weird.
Have we done Scream?
No, that's your next one.
Yeah, I mean, we may run out of time, but okay. We ready for that or not?
Sure.
Okay. Question is, of course, there have been 7 Screams, apparently. Now it asks, who will return in Scream 8? We all know Sydney also always survives, so she naturally makes it through Scream 7, and the film's meta-narrative suggests she'll be an essential element in future sequels. It's safe to say we can count on her, Sydney, again. Other survivors left on the board include Mason Goodling, Chad, Meeks Martin, and his twin sister Mindy Meeks Martin, played by Jasmine Brown in Scream 8. Both could grow closer to Tatum, if you remember Tatum, over shared trauma as Ghostface survivors. A mid-credits scene where Mindy gets her first taste of on-camera reporting also suggests the series may be transitioning Mindy into more of a Gale Weathers, Courtesy Cox type of journalist role, which would justify her presence at future Ghostface attacks. Plus, as the resident film expert, Mindy will remain necessary going forward for the series to maintain its meta spirit, at least until Hayden Panettiere's horror Kirby Reed returns to fill that role. But the biggest question coming out of Scream 7 pertains to the future of Sam. There is notably no mention of their whereabouts in Scream 7, even though it's hard to imagine Chad and Mindy would not hop on the phone with them to discuss the Ghostface's return, how inseparable the Corfer was in Scream 6. But it's also notable Scream 7 makes no commitments about the sisters' fate and avoids a permanent solution such as having them die off-screen, leaving all options open for the future. Besides, Campbell's return once seemed unlikely after she quit Scream 6 over a pay dispute that she suggested was rooted in sexism, so everything is possible. In Scream 7, the start of a new trilogy, is it? While it may be hasty to already talk about Scream 9, Williamson has floated the idea that Scream 7 could be the first chapter in a trilogy. And then the last paragraph here. When he wrote 2011's Scream 4, Williamson planned for it to launch a trilogy about Emma Roberts' Jill, which never happened. But now that Scream 7 is a hit, fans, might Williamson get the new trio of movies he hoped for 15 years ago? Whether or not this is a trilogy or not remains to be seen. Williamson recently told Pedestrian, adding, "I hope so. If people turn out for this one, then we can talk about a trilogy." Just be warned, Scream 9 cast, as Randy Meeks taught us, at the end of a trilogy, no one is safe.
This is the Lifeline section of Life, the section of the newspaper here. It's always on the first page. They said what? The Star's best quotes. Rumors of our demise were inaccurate and greatly exaggerated. Gayle King, confirming she'll remain at CBS Mornings after signing a new contract with CBS News. A report from Variety last year suggested King was expected to depart her role as morning show anchor at the end of her current contract in May, amid a series of changes at the network. King squashed that speculation March 4th, saying she's excited about continuing at CBS Mornings, while noting she's also open to new adventures at CBS. She added, "It took a minute, but we got there, and now we're all here, and I'm all in." You've been listening to a reading of USA Today for the 9th day of March, We read USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, please call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been Tom Scanlon and
Tom Travers.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another